Simon, Jason, Robin, Marina. A few of you do have your cameras on. It's wonderful to see your smiling faces. Anna, hello. Pete. We'd love to see more of you turn your cameras on if at all possible. It helps Tony to feel your questions and for all of us to get a sense of this field of connection that we're seeking to create together. Great to see you, Nisim. Thank you everyone for turning your cameras on. As others can do so, please turn your cameras on as well. Just a few notes about asking questions. If you have a question for Tony, please type it in the chat to everyone. If you type it to me personally, I'm unlikely to see it because I multitask and I really don't pay attention to the chat. So just type your question there. Address it to everyone. Also, if you want to ask a live question, which we absolutely love to hear, we give priority to live questions. Just raise your hand. There's a little icon, and our expert tech team is providing all the directions to do that as well. So please, if you're appropriately dressed and are able to do so, please turn your cameras on, and look forward to creating this very special atmosphere today with all of you. So without further ado, Tony loves when I say that. Senior teacher, longtime Kabbalah student, Tony, always great to be with you.
Thanks, Mary. Yeah, when you say no further ado, I feel like I'm in a Shakespearean play. Yeah, which we are, I guess. Hi, it's morning for me, so good morning, and whatever good it is at whatever time it is for you, good. Yeah, when you ask a question, it would be great, especially, I'm speaking to the students, when you ask a question, it really helps if your camera's on. I mean, we want to answer everybody's question, but there's a lot more transmitted between you and me when the camera's on. It also helps other people who are observing this, this is a kind of an unusual Q&A part of your curriculum because it's between you and me, but it's also, and all of you, but it's also something that people who are not studying are also watching. They're watching on YouTube and they're watching on Facebook. Because at this level of your study, it's something that the general public can sort of feel, get a sort of a taste for it, and it also helps them understand what's going on, because people have got all kinds of ideas about Kabbalah that have really nothing to do with what it is. And if a person is curious and they want to know, we want them to be able to feel what's really at the heart of it, and you can help with that. You can actually help other people by just turning your camera on, and of course by sharing the need, the question, the deficit that you have. Yeah, speaking about deficits, we're in a very, very unusual time right now, and this is something that Kabbalah spoke about for centuries, but it was never really understood. What did it speak about? It spoke about need, about transition, transformation, and how it's connected to need, to the absence of something. And you know that right now there's so much has been taken away of what we have understood life to be about. Why? Why is it happening? Is it happening because some people manipulated a virus, or because of geopolitical positioning, or the economic system and how it exploits, or what's happening? What we do know is what we feel, and what we feel and how we feel is completely connected and only sensed in us by what we consider to be an inner thing, what we consider to be our emotions. And our emotions are telling us, I used to live a certain way and now I don't live that way anymore. I mean, I want to, especially when they shut it down, when, when we had to stay home, certainly wanted to continue doing the things that we've always done. But it's not the things, it's the want. It's that sensation of need or desire that really tells us where we are and what's going on. But it's not limited only to that. It's not just a sensor in us. It's much more powerful than that. What we sense as need and the reason why we need something, not just the need itself, but the direction that it gives us, that how it motivates us, is directly connected to the force that's actually causing all of the changes that are happening and to the purpose for which the changes are happening. There really isn't this inner and outer thing, the world out there with all of its people forcing its will upon my poor little heart and desire. There's an involvement with what we desire and why, for whom we're desiring something. And it doesn't go really farther than that. This is what Kabbalah explains, that the real force that moves nature resides in our desire and is controlled or directed or understood. Its message and its means of directing life are all in our own intention. What we're seeing out in the world is being directed by what we need, why we need it, and for whom we need it. And all of the things that seem so mystical and seem to be connected to complex diagrams and were misassociated with rituals and all of that, speak only about the direction of the heart. Only about what is this need? Who is the need there to satisfy? Because the things that we long for and the transitions that we go through, they're all there only to bring us to greater and greater connection and understanding and involvement with that force, to see it as close to our heart as it really is. And all of these changes that the world is going through now are an incredible revelation of what really is moving stuff. It used to be the changes happened in one part of the world and not in another part of the world. It happened to some people, but not to everybody. Not this. Not the situation that we're in now. Not this enormous transformation. This is happening to everybody. And because we're sort of inside and disconnected from what you would think of as external desires and external fulfillments, it's all being worked out in your heart right now, isn't it? How you feel. Do you feel like you're in prison? Do you feel like you've lost something? Now, what do you want? Given everything that's happened and has been happening and still is happening, what do you want now? Because this is where where the choice for peace and unity comes. It's in what we desire now and for whom. And it's all completely in our hands. It's not controlled by others. It's controlled by our heart and our connection with each other. So I'm going to play a clip which deals with this sort of in the big strokes. Then we'll come back and I'll start answering your questions. The texts of the sages of Kabbalah, both ancient and modern, go into great detail in mapping out the purpose and the progression of nature and human development within it. And they explain the principle governing law and its master template, which is the process by which the law interacts with the cosmos and its creatures at every level of life. But most importantly for us, it shows what happens in our experience, the inner states that the action of the template creates in us and between us in the human network as humanity evolves into balance with the guiding law. Now, this chart is way too detailed and complex for our purposes. In fact, it only describes the first stage of our development. There's another way that we can look at this, and it's through Kabbalah's three-arrow model, which gives us the big strokes where we can map out the pre-material, the material, and the post-material worlds. There are three major states covering the entire scope of the development of life, beginning with its original nature, then following it through its maturation process until it reaches its fulfillment, expressed as equivalence of form with the force that created it. Let's simplify, and then we'll fill in only the details that we need to locate where we are and why. First, a general description. State number 1. It describes our origin, what brings us into being and how. It tells us what our nature consists of, and it gives us insight into why we experience what we do in the way that we do. And it describes the purpose of our experience while providing a definition of what matter actually is. Our originating state is one of complete unity in an unconscious, passive mode of existence. The only thing that exists there is a pre-material force, the integral law of nature, which we'll define later. This force creates a field of influence, a need. It brings about a single desire only for the purpose of fulfilling it with unlimited good. This sets in motion a process by which that desire must inevitably descend into the world of matter. State number 2 describes our experience in matter. Here, the unconscious unity is perceived as disconnected individual selves pursuing an ever-growing multitude of personal needs. It's the evolution of raw desire through a process that aims it more and more towards an independent need for a conscious inclusion in the goal and design of nature. This phase of evolution is built out of the resistance of the creature to the integral law of nature. And the resistance is what produces our perception of time, space, and motion, preventing any desire, no matter how much we yearn for it, from ever being fully satisfied while we're in this state. State number 3 describes the voluntary reunion of our shattered perception back into a single desire. Here, we as a whole become consciously equivalent to the original thought and the intention that set this system of life into motion. This is where all limitations on receiving fulfillment begin to be lifted. Its force of evolution, the nature of the need now driving the creature, is opposite to that of the one in state 2. This is spiritual, meaning it operates above separation or post-matter and is realigned with the integral law of nature. The evolutionary force at work in state 1 is opposite in nature to the one operating in state 2. And the force at work in state 3 is also opposite to state 2, and this creates perceptual gaps that appear in the transitions between them. The qualities of these forces and the perceptions that arise from them can't touch each other because they're phase inverted and they cancel the other out depending on from which side of the gap they're viewed. From state 3, state 2 is clearly perceptible, but looking from state 2, the third state is hidden and can only be entered by means of an inner transformation that Kabbalah calls equivalence of form. This is where we are, in this gap between the material and the post-material worlds. And we need to know the law that governs this whole process, because that law is the opening to our next stage of development. So maybe that also brought up some questions. If you can, please turn your cameras on. We don't have even a full page on Zoom of active cameras, and it makes me feel alone when I can't see you. So Mary, let's go to the first question.
Okay, that clip certainly brought in a number of questions, Tony. First one we have is live from Jessica Dubois. Great to see you again, Jessica.
Can't hear you, Jess.
Now, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. My question is this. Recently, I've become aware that I do an action, and the action has got, well, when I'm taking the action, I'm taking it with one intention. But then later on, it's like my ego tries to steal it or hijack it, like mostly through thoughts. It's like I'm wondering how I am supposed to respond to that kind of experience, and why is that happening to me? Do you understand what I'm asking?
Yep. Yes, exactly. That is supposed to be happening.
Okay.
The way that the process works is that it's not a once and for all thing, because if it were, it would be based on our created nature, and our created nature is self-concern. So it's always the loop is always going to feed back to satisfying yourself. What this does is it builds, and that's because there's an implanted desire that's already there for you, which is make things good. And my definition of good, according to how I was created, what my nature actually is that I feel that I'm being fulfilled first, basically, and then I know I have a sense of good, and then I go on and do whatever else might need to be done. This is the opposite of the thing that you're trying to build. But we can't build stuff out of our minds. We can only build things that are desires, because only desire is reality. Everything else is just an operating system to assist us. So if we want to change the way that we the intention that we actually have towards others, or the intention behind an act, we have to change what we desire, but we can't change it. It's the way that nature works is that it's a system that helps us do that, but it does it by creating lacks in us. When you start to observe from the side that what you actually do when you think you're giving or thinking of others is still not it, what happens inside? Okay, I'll answer your question for you. I'll answer my own question for you. What happens is that you feel bad. You feel a lack. You say, why can't I do it? And now you need, but what do you need? You don't need the intellectual process of, something you get out of a book, like a schematic. First I think that, then I do that. No. Now there's a correct need growing inside of you. It's minuscule, but it's the beginning of a desire in the right direction. So how do we ever attain that full desire to work for the whole and for others? We do it by nature always pushing us back, by showing us where we are not like that. Because our response, because we are a will to receive, is to continually want that. We now have a taste for that. We have a desire for that. And now the actions that we take are according to this beginning of a corrected desire, and eventually it grows to encompass our entire heart. That becomes our only desire. So you're in the process. You just have to recognize that nature always pushes us back in order to help us become like it.
Okay, thank you, Jessica. We have another live question, Tony, from Daniel. Good to see you, Daniel. Go ahead.
Hello.
Hi,
Hello.
Daniel.
Yeah, Tony, nice meeting you again. I've been your student since June, and I really miss you. The question is, I know that Kabbalah teaches that God created the evil inclination, and at the same time, He gave the Torah as a spice. Is it a pleasure to the Creator to do that? it gives the creator pleasure to create an evil inclination, and at the end he gives a Torah as a spice.
The pleasure, so to speak, I mean, the general law of nature, the creator, does not need pleasure, right? It's really a figurative way of speaking. But there is an intention, there is a goal in creation. And the pleasure comes when we use the evil inclination, or in other words, the will to receive, when we use that in accordance with the goal that nature has for our evolution. So the pleasure is seeing the fulfillment of the general plan of nature through your agreement with it, through you desiring exactly the same thing. There is no pleasure except the pleasure of uniting, the pleasure of the heart uniting with another heart. So this is a figurative way of saying that what your heart desires is the same desire as the heart of the general law. And so you're in a relationship of love. And that's the greatest pleasure that there is. But it comes as a result of the change in your heart. And the pleasure is felt in you, but it's actually a shared pleasure because you are fulfilling the desire of the Creator by wanting what the Creator wants. Is that clear?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, going on to the next question. This is from a YouTube viewer, Divya and Joseph. Will only those who are destined to reach self-realization do so in a certain lifetime?
Yeah, that's a nice question. Well, but it's a tricky question, and if I really parse what you what you said, there's some interesting contradictions there. Only those destined, So who's destined and who's not destined? And in a particular lifetime, all of creation, all of life is destined for complete fulfillment. There are awakened parts of life, parts of you, and there are the still unawakened parts of you. The awakened part is probably here studying, because there's a kind of conscious involvement with that desire. There's nothing else to know or learn. There's really no other definition for life. So you presently have a conscious hunger to do it. So you're here, or you're watching. But you're not you. We are a complete integrated system. Nature is all one thing, and there's a part that's like a head, and there's a part that's like a hand, and not literally, but it's like a body, and there are parts that are what we call conscious, and there are parts that are autonomic, like how your organs function without you saying, liver, distill this beer. You don't have to do that, right? So everything is destined for complete fulfillment. But there's a responsibility that comes along with the conscious fulfillment, and that is to be a channel, sort of open up, get out of the way, so that the unawakened parts of humanity, so to speak, or of the world, also receive the inkling for that desire. And yes, in one lifetime, a person can achieve everything because there is only one lifetime. Even if the partition between life and death has to do with what we desire and how complete our alignment, our synchronization, our agreement with the law of nature is. So everybody, but the people who are consciously awoken are the first, and then are responsible for the unawakened parts of themselves, which look like 8 billion people out there. But not just 8 billion people, it's also all the animal kingdom, all the vegetative kingdom, and even the rocks that are like hurling through space. That's also you and your desire.
Tony, the same viewer, Divya, has a follow-up question. How can you find a genuine and true teacher who can guide you in the process?
You have to follow your heart. You have to listen, and you have to see what happens in you, and you have to test it out. There's no way that you can know who is a true teacher or not. But I'll tell you that in terms of Kabbalah, the system no longer functions like it does in the in the stories and the myths about Kabbalah. It used to be that it was conveyed directly from teacher to disciple, small group. But because of the general evolution of the ego right now, we no longer learn that way. We are seeing on the physical world that, our projection that we call the physical world, we're seeing the force of the Creator coming really close to us, and it's to all of us. And now we learn as a whole. We are learning as an entire generation. So there's no need to seek out an individual type relationship with a teacher, but the teaching lineage of authentic Kabbalah is present in Kabyu is one of the organs of teaching and of learning that comes from a direct lineage of Kabbalistic sages. So you can learn here, and you can learn with other people and from multiple instructors, because we're all working with the same force of unity and connection that we've received from our teachers. So you can find it here. You can find it by trying out a course in Kabyu. See what it's like. The people who are in this, who you can see on Zoom, these students are in the first and second and third semesters of their study, and the study goes on starting from basic principles, and it goes into advanced targets and principles, and then eventually into the practical work. And it becomes a change, not of ideas, but a change of perception. And you can learn that all here in Kabyu. And there's a course that's starting on the, what is it? Let me just check this. It's the 29th? On the 29th. And you can try it out. It's free to start. And you'll see that they'll post a link to that, so you can check it out. It'll be in the chats. Okay.
Okay, thank you for both of those questions. Next, Tony, we have another live question from John O. I see you're ready to go. Good to see you, John.
Hi, I was wondering about the worlds on the ascending side of the graph, and how one might be able to determine qualitatively which one they're inhabiting or looking at things from. Thanks. Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Okay.
Yeah. And I love your hat.
Thank you.
The worlds are basically states of growing similarity between the desire, your desire, and the desire of the Creator. That is, you are more or less, more and more, one is more and more, in desires of bestowal. And understanding and feeling and doing within the heart for the same reason that the Creator is. It's objective in the sense that everybody who experiences that level called a particular world will be experiencing the same scope, of bestowal and lack of bestowal as anybody else at that general level. But a person never knows where they are until they've gone beyond it. Because the whole process is a process of challenge and response. We're constantly moving towards it and being pushed away from it. But I can tell you right now that nobody here is in those worlds. You know, we're not there. We're in a transition point between the self-obsessed world of material desire and the beginnings of the worlds of giving, the worlds of giving, basically. And that only happens through connections with others. There is no advancement, basically, for the individual self. That's what we don't use in the world of bestowal. What we use is the integral connection, the force that connects us. And it happens in our work in relation to other people. It happens in our attitude towards others and towards a circle of others, basically, because that's how nature is arranged. So the sensations that we have about others and our relationship to others tell us, in a sense, what world we're in. But there's more information than that, and it comes when you start studying things like Talmud Esher Sefirot, the study of the 10 sefirot, which has got to do with with that inner system that gets charted out, and a person begins to feel how close are they, how much are they not thinking of others, and it becomes an awareness that we don't have now. So I can't give you an objective answer to that. The answer is subjective, but everybody on that level feels exactly the same thing. That's the best I can do without you being there. Mary?
All set, John? I didn't know if John had a follow-up question because your hand was still up.
So is that similar to the differences in the say, like, the names of the characters in the biblical stories? They represent different states and how we react to the things that we perceive.
Yes, though the names of the biblical characters are another way of expressing parts of those worlds. The worlds are also divided up into increments. This is what we call the ladder, you know. So yeah, each one of them is a balance. Each one of the names of the biblical characters are a balance between reception and bestowal. And the names of God that appear there are formulae that have to do with the extent of the bestowal. All of that stuff is really scientific, in a sense. I mean, it's an ancient science, but it has to do with the science of emotion and relation. Okay.
Okay, next question. Svi, I'm very happy to see that you got help and figured out how to raise your hand. I know you've been struggling there to get your question in. Okay, we'd love to hear your question. Go ahead.
Well, thank you for that. I'm glad that I managed to just figure it out. Great to meet you, Tony, and thank you for all your insightful content. I've been wondering, I've been raised in a very religious environment for many years, and it started to feel very meaningless, and I stopped many of the practices even before I found your lectures because I was looking for more of an internal connection. And can you speak to that a bit? Because there's still an internal conflict between the fact that the tradition of my religion, Judaism, goes back many years, and I'm raised in an environment, you know, community, family, and so on, that practices it. It seems like there's something to it, given all its lineage going back so many years, but it feels so meaningless to me. Can you speak to that conflict a bit?
I've been through the same thing. It isn't a conflict. I mean, it's felt as a conflict, but that's because there is a root and branch connection here between, you know, all the religions that came, the Abrahamic religions, all come from Kabbalah. And they but the connection to the force of nature, to the light, to the upper force, was lost, and we call that loss the destruction of the temples. But it's there for a purpose. It's there to give us a contrast, so that we can begin to feel what the root level actually is. First, we're sort of scattered, sent out, dispersed, and I don't mean just Jewish religion, because the Jewish religion is not Kabbalah, but it is branched to Kabbalah, right? So, but it's a memory device, just like what's in other Abrahamic religions. It's the physical actions are memory devices for things that actually exist on the spiritual level, and they are more or less accurate depending on how far away from the source in what we call time they evolved. So you'll find that the fall into the physical that happened around the Second Temple first became the Jewish religion. So yeah, it has the correct external forms. And as a memory device, it's important that people have kept these actions while corrections were not possible, while the ego hadn't evolved to the point where we actually could make corrections and reunite humanity, which is the whole point of nature, is to unify and unify and unify. So when you become awakened, when any person becomes awakened to the real nature of the purpose of life, then you can't be satisfied by only the externals, because the externals are not the corrections. They're just like a placeholder saying, this should be corrected, and this should be corrected, and this should be corrected. But we no longer know in religions even what the correction is pointing at. What gets corrected? I act like a good person? I don't kill? I don't... I mean, all right, but inside, what's going on with me? You know, what's the real attitudes, and of what character are we truly? When you begin to feel the contrast between what should be and what actually is, regardless of how beautiful and observant our community is, now you're at the beginning of the path. And it's absolutely natural that you will feel that the external actions are not the actual mitzvot. They're not the commandments. The commandment is the commandment of the change of heart. And you can't do that with your hands and feet. You have to learn what it actually is. And then when you do, you see, oh, that's why those laws, so to speak, are so strange. And because they're not talking about this world. They're talking about the inner world. Now, the reason I say that it's not a conflict from the point of view of the Kabbalist. The Kabbalist understands and sees what is really being dealt with in those frozen physical mitzvot, in Shulchan Aruch and all that stuff. You can see through it, and you can see the living water in it. But a person inside of that cannot understand it. So because you have the point of view where you can see what's alive in it, it's up to you to be good and kind, and not get into a conflict with people who don't see beyond it because they don't have the contrast. And it is a difficult transition, but there's no need. What you do internally, as opposed to what it appears that you're doing externally, that's your business with the Creator, with the light that's evolving you. You don't have to tell other people about it. You don't have to get into conflict with it, because they're actually not in conflict. They're just not awakened. It'll get clearer to you the further you get into it. It will stop being such a head-on collision, but it takes time. Thanks for the question, Svi.
Tony, it's amazing. There's so many live questions, also questions pouring in from YouTube and Facebook. Before we go to the next live question, if you wouldn't mind here in Zoom and also on YouTube and Facebook, just to type in where you're viewing from, city and country, if you will. I'd like to share those with everyone in a couple of minutes. The next question is from Christopher Padilla here in Zoom. Great to see you, Chris.
Sorry, can everybody hear me? I actually lowered my hand because I'm not sure if Tony might have already answered my question with the previous person he was answering, but it's always a pleasure to hear from you, Tony. And I'm not sure, you might have answered my question, but my question would be, how dangerous is it? How dangerous is separation and distancing in Kabbalistic work? I mean,
What do you mean by distancing, and what do you mean by distancing?
like distancing, like from the creator, maybe when one feels separation in that sense, or if one acknowledges that there is a creator and that all comes from the creator, but what if maybe a person is cynical about that, or that he acknowledges that there is a creator, but the creator, it just gives him blows, constant blows, and so he becomes cynical in that sense, and so he says, well, the creator isn't good. What kind of person would that be? And also, I mean, how does that relate to someone maybe even thinking like, oh, I don't really want to deal with this person today, or I don't really want to deal with society or deal with all these problems that are going on, whether in corporeal reality. How does one protect themselves from that feeling of separation? Sorry if that's too big.
No, that's not too big. It's chewable. Well, you got no business with the creator. You should be cynical, because our idea of what the creator is, and the idea that we have a relationship with the creator, a direct individual relationship with the creator, is nonsense. That's just, our relationship with what we call the creator only happens through our relationship with others. The rest of it is just illusion. The atheists are right. In the sense that there is no objective creator. There is the force that drives and connects, unifies, creates, and sustains. And we're responsible in that process. So it's our relationship, the love of others is the love for the creator. You can't start with the love of the creator first. There's the greatness. There is the sensation that, well, nature is vast, it's huge, it's everything and everywhere. It's so completely synchronized and beautiful. It's so beyond, and it runs through everything as intimate as it possibly can. And it runs through every person and every situation. That's greatness. That sort of stirs the heart and makes us, we just want that. We want to touch that. But the way that we touch it is by relating to other people. Now, that feeling that you said, how dangerous is it? It's part of the process, Chris. You have to both want it and be pushed back. Because that's the way that nature evolves everything. It does it by pressuring and shaping. And the feelings that we have about other people fundamentally are this. Here's one thing we absolutely have in common. We don't want anything to do with anybody else. And we don't want to be responsible for anybody. And that's not a bad person. That's every person. That's what a person is. We don't want to be connected. We want to be separate and fulfilled and in direct relationship with the Creator who gives me everything. That's what we're unlearning. So the fact that you notice it is really good. That our environment is kind of like constantly pressuring us on every level. But the way that we correct it is by recognizing that right now you're in this thing with how many people are there? There's 58 other students online. Those students are all part of you, and eventually you will begin to work with a number of them, and you'll be able to test out on a minute-to-minute basis what's actually going on with your heart. It's dangerous not to care. It's dangerous for that not to bother you. Dangerous in the sense that you won't consciously fulfill what you would like to fulfill. You won't reach your goal. Not dangerous. Well, this is happening. This is the correction that's happening in humanity generally. If we are indifferent, if we don't realize that the very problems that we're facing now are all because we don't want this connection and are not working towards it. But I think we all feel now that we're beginning to understand that it's all got to do with it. These problems would go away if we were really careful about each other. That's like what the mask, the mask is about. It's not about protecting us. The mask doesn't protect us. It protects others from us. When there's a story about a person comes to Rabbi Akiva, who's the great Kabbalist at the time of the destruction of the temple, and he says, "Teach me the Torah while I'm standing on one foot." And he says, "What you find hateful, don't do to your friend." That's the beginning, right? Realize that you are responsible for others, and the light and the Torah, meaning the will of nature, that transforms nature into unity, starts first without doing harm, but it's in relation to other people. Then it goes to love your friend as yourself. So do good to others as your primary. First you have to stop doing harm, then you do good. But the whole thing is only about relationship with other people, and that's how you measure your evolution. You don't measure it by what you have. You don't measure it by what you think. You measure it by what's in your heart towards others. So you're in a good place.
Okay, thank you, Tony. We have another live question. Nisim, glad that you finally figured out how to get your hand up. We'd love to hear you.
All right, boys. Yeah, Ben. All right. Hi, Tony. Thank you
Hi.
for taking our question. I'm wondering just first, like the 125 steps on the ladder, we're wondering where that comes from. Is it from just correction of the midot, or is that like rooted in the sefirot? And a second question that we have is like, in the realm of the united soul, the global soul, can a thought take place in your mind that's not yours? Like, for example, in your spiritual state, like you have a certain belief system, but then something might pop in your mind that you disagree with, and you're not sure where that thought comes with because it doesn't associate with you. It doesn't speak to you. Is that part of the global soul? And with that thought, should we redeem it with a positive thought, or what approach should we take?
Hi, guys. Where are you? Are you in a dorm or something?
Yeah, we're in yeshiva in Jerusalem, or Sameach.
Wow, that's beautiful. Hi, guys. Let me start with the second part of your question. All of our thoughts and all of our desires come from the Creator. It's our response to them that is the important thing for us. It's anything that appears in us is there in order to help a correction. But the correction has to do with it can be very opposed to us, and it could even be. Well, I'll just stick with the thoughts. The thoughts come from the Creator, but you can say that they come from the general soul, because the influence of society is only an influence of desire. So some things we identify as coming from us, and other things we feel as foreign to us, but they're all in the network, and you don't really have to correct that except to acknowledge ein od milvado, in the first place, right? There's none else besides him. But our job is not to judge. Our job is to bring everything to correction, and we only bring it to correction by by going above our reason, in a sense, not judging all those things, but to use them in some way to help us move forward in a good relationship with other people. You're asking a very advanced question, and we don't yet have the tools or the common language right now in where you are to speak about how that correction happens. But there's nothing wrong with those things. We're given foreign thoughts in order for us to choose to come back to the goal, come back to none else besides him, and come back to our relation, and not to buy into those things, and not to get into an argument with the ego. Because as soon as we do, the ego is our kind of reason that judges and separates everything. As soon as we get into an argument, we've lost. So we say thank you, but right now all I care about is the connection to the Creator, and you're probably right in your reason. However this stupid idea that is opposed to me gets presented, I'm not getting into an argument with it. I'm seeing it as part of the whole, and I'm attributing it to the Creator. Now the first part of your question, the numbers come from worlds and parzufim and sefirot. It's how we divide the transformational process according to how the worlds were created from a unity, and how they went through different phases, parzufim, and the parzufim are broken down by a certain number, and they are also broken down by 10 sefirot, and that's where the number 125 comes from. But Nissim, all of those numbers they're not quantities, they're qualities, right? And you'll find that across Kabbalah, you can make those calculations, and they'll show you that if a certain number appears in a certain place, like in Gematria, it means that it's talking about a similar state. That's all. It's just saying it's a coordinate, an emotional, let's call it an emotional coordinate in the general soul and in your evolution, but it's not it's not a quantity. Okay?
Hey, thank you, Nissim and friends. Tony, I'd like to share some of the locations where viewers are watching
Great.
from, joining us from. Lebanon, Paris, Izmir, Turkey, Hebron, Barcelona, Colombia, Philadelphia, Australia, Miami, New England, India, Michigan, St. Simon's Island, Georgia, USA, Ohio, Netherlands, Washington, Accra, Charlotte, Puerto Rico, Northwestern PA, Bridgeport, Connecticut, Somers Point, New Jersey, Quebec, Melbourne, Morocco, Plymouth, Mass, Italy, Connecticut, Concord, New Hampshire, Chicago, Jerusalem, Jacksonville, Florida, and Romania. Thank you.
I thought this was supposed to be Asia. I guess there's no more separating parts of the world, right? So
I also see someone just quick typed in the chat, Brazil and also Malaysia. So if we didn't read your hometown, please type it in. I'll continue a bit later. Okay,
I mean, look at what's happening to us. It's a few. Let me see. I've been with BB for like almost 20 years. Yeah, 20 years. When I started to instruct, learned how to instruct, and when I remember having, it was done live, and I remember one event where there was one person that came, one person, in Toronto, and sat there and just talked for half an hour with this one person. Maybe you were all in that one person. I don't know. Maybe that's the way that it works. But now, and there was very little interest and lots of misunderstanding. And now look at this. You put something up on the internet, in Facebook or YouTube, and the entire world is present. It's just extraordinary. Okay, that was my reverie. Go ahead, Mary.
Okay, yeah, Dubai, Venezuela, Antibes, France, California. I just quick saw in the chat that I forgot London. Special shout out to London. I'm not that talented. The tech team is filtering all of these into a document for me. Austria, California, and I'll continue in a bit. So again, thank you. It's amazing. Okay, so let's go to the next question, Tony. We have several live questions coming up. The next one is from Ion.
Hi. Nice to see you, Tony. Nice to see you all.
Good to see you.
In the meanwhile, you almost answered my question, and there was a thought, oh, maybe you should stop and leave others, but my egoistic decides, no, put the questions anyway. So if all the desires I was thinking, all these names and all these numbers, they're just bits of information for me until I actually cross that barrier. And everything that I have to focus on is my attitude towards others. And when we are in society, we know that we have to always focus on the intention and on our correction. But can you develop a bit more from your perspective? How do we do that? Because it's always we see so many faults in the friends, for example, and we always try to think about them as being our own. So it's always process of thinking, rethinking, fighting, and making peace. And how do you see the best way of changing this attitude towards friends or towards society? How should we always focus, and how should we always see only besides him?
What semester are you in now?
Oh, I finished a long time ago. I'm with a graduate in Poem.
Good. Okay, so now I know how to. Well, first of all, we don't do this correction. The light does the correction. What we do is we do efforts in relating with other people. Like you're working in a 10 now? Yes. Okay. So we make those efforts, and we're constantly working against. See, the Creator is the one that's separating us. The Creator is the force that separates us in order so that our nature will evolve and will start functioning above our nature. But we're not the ones who make the change. It's the effort that attracts a force that actually changes, allows us to go outside of that, to function above our nature. And it's a process, it's a bit by bit process. And it happens the more that you are trying to do this, the more resistance that you feel, the greater desire that you feel. And it's the biggest thing. Imagine that rather than, it's just like, if you think of your emotions and your desires just like sort of smoke or fog, then you think, well, this should clear up quickly. A wind comes in and blows it away. But if you realize that the fundamental building blocks of reality are your emotions and your desires, then for a universe to reshape itself, and for a life form to reshape itself, it takes a lifetime. It means it's a constant evolvement, and we begin to get our pleasure from the process itself. And we begin to see, and we separate, we stop seeing ourselves as the subject of it. We start to see, oh, this is the process of nature. And now I see both the good, what I thought of as the good and the bad, my rejection and connection. I'm starting to see it as forces working on the general reality. And I find it, regardless of my state, I am now observing this process, which means to some degree you are moving outside of it, and your efforts attract light that helps you make this transition, and your heart changes because it's what you want. The light can only go into a desire for it. It can't go into a desire for something else. So this process that you do with other people builds a particular kind of a need or a vessel for exactly what the light wants to give you. And then the light goes in to some degree and you begin to change. It's not that you did it. It was you in connection with other people, the struggle that built a desire for what the light wants to offer, and the light comes and changes you. And regardless of what's happening to you, you become a servant of the Creator. In other words, you are, regardless of your condition, you are still working at unifying with other people above differences. That's where love exists. That's where the unity is. It's not in the differences. It's above the differences and regardless of the difference. You need the difference in order to make the connection. You need to feel you don't want them. You're not connected. You don't care. And then to go above that and to care anyway. Or at least to see that the love and the connection and the unity is not in the separate parts. It's above them. And you have access to that place above it. The other thing is, I don't know if this is what you mean, but I want to clarify for other people. You can't do this out in the general world until you learn the methodology. If you learn to see this, I mean, you're asking, what is the method, basically? The method is this constant trial and rejection, and then working above it. You eventually are not in between those two levels, but above it. But you can't do that with people who are not trying to do it. You have to first learn it as you are in a group of 10, in a kind of a simulator, and then you can begin to work on behalf of the rest of the world. But you can't do it in the general public because the desire in the general public is for self-satisfaction. And you will fall into that if you're trying to relate with it. You need to build your connection in the simulator, and then you open up a channel that actually helps the rest of the world, but you can't do it with the rest of the world. You can do it for the rest of the world. You know, those are, I'm pointing, it's like someone pointing to a continent. It's like it's a big thing, but you have to open that up in your awareness, and it only happens with the kind of struggle that you have when you're working with your friends in the 10. Okay?
Okay, let's go to another live question. Tony Tuomo, who doesn't have a camera, by the way, has a question. Go ahead, Tuomo.
Greetings. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Perfect. There's been a couple of questions relating somewhat to this topic or this question, but it goes like, in transcending to the natural order or the absolute or the higher reality, if you will, are there roles or specific callings for each of us, as in what we would call professions or fields of expertise in our contemporary material world? Or are we not to pay attention to this sort of individuality as such at all when considering the transformation into a higher consciousness?
Well, if you have a profession or you're attracted to a profession, that's eventually it will become useful to you in one way or another, either directly in serving other people, which in fact all professions actually do serve others. That's what they are. We think that they're for something else, but that's all they're for. Or it will just be a means of sustenance for you, just your basic, it'll meet your basic needs and the basic needs of your family, and it's a necessity. But it's the physical, like, I'll give you an example. Here's, by profession, I'm a composer and a producer. Like, I work in broadcast and entertainment and that kind of thing. So that eventually, before learning Kabbalah and working towards spiritual evolution, I did it in order to see beauty and win an Emmy, that kind of thing. Now, I do it in order to serve people's desire for spirituality. So that was useful and directly related to the occupation. Even if you were a restaurant owner, which is a rarity these days, you'd be, once you evolved spiritually, you would recognize that what you were doing is supplying life to people. So we don't understand our occupations when we go for them egoistically at the beginning. From a spiritual perspective, we begin to understand that we're cogs in a system that serves humanity as a whole. And it's the only reason that they are there. And that's why we're losing many of them now in this COVID situation, because the preponderance of them are not necessary. They're not actually serving. They're just excess. The ones that are connected to real needs are the ones that are going to survive this, because that's the kind of transition that we're going through. Now, on the other hand, our real occupation is the purpose of life itself. It's the one that it's not up to us. It's the one that's embedded in life, in the process, and that's spiritual evolution, the evolution of life, and that becomes another occupation. So yeah, you should pay attention to it, and especially if you're at the beginning of your career, establish yourself. Establish yourself and make sure that you have what you need for your necessities and for your family and all that stuff. But realize that your real occupation is to serve the quality of life for the world as a whole, and spirituality is your actual occupation. The other stuff is just your job.
Okay, we have another live question, Tony. This one comes from Odo. Looking forward to your question, Odo. Go ahead. Odo Oliver.
Yes. Hello.
Hi, Odo.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
So my question is, please, how can I be praying? Techniques of for me to the universe.
I think I heard most of your question, but you cut out. So can you ask it again and speak a little bit slower so the technology can catch you?
No, I said, how will I be doing within myself in order for me to be connected, to feel the connection and impact of the universe within me and got connected to the universe?
You can't do it within you on your own. This is something that we learned from religion and from childhood and from simplistic instruction that we received early in life. You can admire the greatness of the Creator, but you can't make really a connection that way. You can only do it through your relationship with other people. First of all, you have to learn. You need the books of the Kabbalists, and you need some kind of oral instruction so that you understand what the target is, what we should pay attention to and not, and it points us to things that are really not in this world. They're not in our current desires. They point us to the kind of desire that we should be working towards. The greatness of the Creator and the experience of the integral system of nature, and that it's all within us, only happens as a result of the efforts that we make in relation to other people. Because when we're doing that, we're not abstracting the use of love. We're not abstracting our perception, and we're not wasting our perception on things that aren't important. The prayer, if our inner prayer is to allow please allow all of us to connect and to experience that, then you will begin to experience it. You will be the first to experience it, and then those who you are praying for will receive that because of the prayer. But the desire has to be towards others. It can't be towards ourselves. We can never receive anything that way except impermanent corporeal fulfillment, which dies along with the concept of individuality dies. That's why the body dies. It's not true. The individual self is not true, and eventually nature takes care of us and passes it away, and we begin again to work until we understand that our soul is the others. Not there's nothing here. It's the others that are our spirituality. And it's our work towards others and our prayers for their fulfillment that allows us to feel all of reality within ourselves. Okay? Don't want to get too
Tony,
mystical here.
Sorry. All
Go ahead.
set. A viewer on YouTube has a question about the others, about caring for other people. Alejandro Gonzalez is asking, my question is about depression. I have several friends suffering this awful disease now, and I want to know if spirituality or Kabbalah study can help them, and if so, how?
Well, if a person is studying Kabbalah as a medicine against depression, it won't help them. The reason for studying has to be because you have a desire that you need to fulfill. If you're coming to Kabbalah for that reason, yes, it does work against depression, depending on what the source of the depression is. Because it makes us understand why we are supposed to feel bad. The emotional aspect of depression is that we don't accept the fact that we don't like what's going on. We don't see that as purposeful. We think that that's not supposed to be happening. And we reject the action of nature on us. And we say that life should only be good, which is absurd. Anywhere you look, you understand that life is a dynamic between what we consider to be good or not. The lack of acceptance of that on an emotional level causes emotional depression. You say that somebody has an emotional, their emotional health is not good. But if a person is depressed because they're clinically depressed because of their body chemistry, you have to deal with that on the level that it's happening. There's like levels of nature, and you have to deal with them on those levels. Yeah, thought and correct intention actually controls all of it, but if a person is not dealing with the chemical depression, then they can't study Kabbalah. They won't understand anything because it will fall into a mechanism that they cannot overcome, and they're not supposed to. We're supposed to heal everything at its correct level. But yeah, if you don't have a chemical problem that isn't, and if you don't have one, or if you're dealing with the chemical problem, then the emotional depression goes away because you see it as a mechanism. You really understand and you feel it and you live through it, and it's exhilarating. All of us are depressed to some degree or another because all of us reject the left hand action of the Creator. We say, no, that shouldn't happen. But that's half of reality, and no wonder we're not happy. You can't live in half of reality. So it could help people, yes, but not, again, don't come into it in order to get rid of depression, because that will be coming in for the wrong reason.
Okay, Tony, we also have several questions from Facebook. The first one is from Mohan. What happens to us when we are dead? Is there a rebirth? After we are dead, do we go to another state of existence?
The system is designed so that a person can fulfill the goal within one lifetime and attain complete sort of correction and alignment with the upper force. If a person does not complete that, though, then they simply return and continue after a while. You know, they grow up, or maybe they come into a family or whatever that's already doing that. None of the physical stuff is real anyway, but we continue. We're never cut off. There is no other place to be except in the spiritual evolutionary stream, and we awaken again to that stream and we continue working again. And it happens instantaneously. There's no other place. Reality is much bigger than what we can perceive, and our perception is limited by our egoistic desire. The less egoistic desire we have, the broader our perception of reality, and the more we see what people think of as another world. But it's not another world. It's just the actual world, only now more of it is in our perception. So it's not like there's this life and an afterlife and so on. There is the scale at which we can perceive, and it broadens according to the work that we do, according to what nature wants from us. So it's all one continuous process towards our good.
Okay, we do have other questions from Facebook and YouTube, but I see, Jerry, you've been waiting quite some time to ask your question. We're looking forward to your question next. Please go ahead.
I want to apologize for it first, but I was
No, I'm
talking
sorry. I'm not forgiving you. I've got to hear the question first.
I was chatting with a very nice Christian man, and he wanted to know all about Kabbalah. And I chatted with him and talked, and he listened, and I mentioned Dr. Michael Lightman, and he says, oh. And then he started quoting all this scripture, and that Michael was in this scripture, and he's the Antichrist. Oh my God. I was very nice. I excused myself and left. But this is not the first time that I've heard this. So can you, I know the Bible, and I even tried to tell him this, he wasn't listening, that the Bible is code. Can you give me what is the code? What is the Antichrist?
I have no idea what the Antichrist is.
Hmm.
I would, because it's based on an interpretation of terminologies that are derivative of the actual wisdom itself. So it's really hard to know what any person means when they use those terms. But to me, it's kind of meaningless, because that kind of a description is all happening within the egoistic boundaries of disconnection. So it represents an aspect of human psychology where there is a strict separation between the good experiences of life and the bad experiences of life, and a lack of perception of why it exists that way. But if it was up to me to write the dictionary of and interpret Christianity, then I would say that the human itself, that the human impulse, the selfish impulse, all of humanity is against that quality of integration and connection that I suppose the definition of Christ is supposed to be. It's supposed to be that tendency towards the wholeness of the system, the complete goodness behind the intention of nature, the complete sovereignty of the Creator over life, that is, that the upper force manages everything, and that we completely resist it. There's no individual in the picture at all. really, it is a system of connection. So it hurts my heart when I hear that, because I think about what is the suffering going on in that constriction, but I understand it. All of our feelings of fear, they build definitions that way. I have nothing against Christians. I think that their Christianity is part of our family, and it is a descendant of truth, and you can't. There's nothing beneficial in trying to convince people who are in a religious structure. It's not good for you either. It doesn't help them. It's like a stumbling block for them, because their heart is not open to it in such a way. If they would realize, and they will eventually realize, that this is their heritage, and they will eventually, be open to it and feel freed by it and be happy. But you can't confront somebody about it. It's a matter of evolution for a person. We include them; they can't include us. Okay? I can't hear you.
There is no Antichrist, because it's in the New Testament. That's not part of the Torah. So there is no Antichrist. So it's not like.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Let me just answer that in a simple way. This is a way of trying to understand human experience. It's a set of definitions that come without benefit of attainment. So it's not that it's just an inadequate set of definitions that don't encompass the scope of nature. They really don't. Okay, that's all that it is. It's not that there is or there isn't. This is about what the human heart can accept and or not, and it's a step in evolution, and there's nothing wrong with it.
Okay, Tony, related question when you were talking about the system earlier. Lawrence, viewing from Facebook, wants to know, is the will to receive, in other words, a creation, part of the creator, as there is none else besides him? On the other hand, we know that he just bestows. So how do these two parts fit together?
They are the opposite side of the same force. There is no will to receive inside the creator. And yet the entire thing is created by the will to bestow. There can't be any bestowal if there isn't a vessel that requires to receive something, that requires fulfillment. So that's why we never define the essence of the creator, because unless there's a comparison, unless you can compare these forces, there's no sensation of the creator. So the will to receive is created in order for us to feel the quality, to taste the quality of life and existence. Without that, there is just the essence of the creator, and there is nothing to be experienced. It's good, but there's nobody tasting the good. And in a sense, it's all a kind of a game, but it's a real game. It is reality. The will to receive and the will to bestow are always separated by a void, by a gap, so that life can exist. The experience of life can exist, and I can't explain it any further than that.
Okay, next up is a question from Simon Dorlac here in Zoom. Bonjour, Simon. Comment ça va? How would you simply explain to a non-Kabbalist to become equal form to the Creator?
Well, there's a law of nature, and the law of nature is that it wants to unify everything for the good of everything. And equivalence of form would be that our heart also wants to make sure that in every situation that we're in, we want that same thing. We want good for everybody, and we want a connection to be there so that I am in service of others, and so are others in service of others, and not just that we are doing, but that we want that we have the same attitude towards the world and creation as the law of nature itself does. It wants to give to all for good, and so do we want that, desire it.
Okay, next is a question from a Facebook viewer, Michelle Volante. What does ego-less look like, and what is the state like?
Ego-less, well, you're not going to hear this except through your egoistic ears, So I can describe, that's what's around you. That's what this is. That's what reality is. It already is that, but we don't sense it that way. You're already functioning that way, but you don't feel that way. You just don't agree with it. Egoless is the joy that you feel in the fulfillment of other people. If they're enjoying something and getting what they need, you feel that too. It's as though it were happening to you. And it is. And the quality of the Creator is this. It's that the Creator never thinks, do I exist? Am I doing good to my creatures? How am I doing? It's without reference to the self. It's not that the self doesn't exist, because it exists in order to serve. It exists as a node of conscious agreement. Like we're in the system in order to serve it. So it's just, why are we here? But it's without questioning, am I going to get what I need? And the joy of others becomes our joy, and it's a constantly expanding vessel that can never be filled. It never gets filled up, and then we're not hungry anymore. Joy and the need for joy expands and is ever filled over and over again. We never lose our appetite for the goodness of others, and we also experience it. I guess we're getting close to the end here, so a couple more questions and then we'll wrap up.
Okay, let's go back to John O. John has another question. Go ahead, John.
Hi. Wanted to ask, what are, if any, similarities between the aspects of our mind or imagination that we're using to determine how we connect with people, or how we feel and react to the world, and the Creator that we're trying to get to know. Thank you.
Is your question, what's the difference between our imaginative...
Are there any similarities
between your imaginative function when you're working and the actual force of the Creator?
Oh, maybe not so much the actual force, but maybe it would be better to ask what purpose does our imagination or imaginative qualities serve in trying to achieve that connection?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a good question. All evolution, human evolution, and all learning and attainment comes from game playing. We only evolve through acting as though, because if the target is something that we don't know, we can't imagine. It's like when a kid imagines that they're flying a jet or something, and then it's nothing like when they actually go through, training and actually fly a jet. But when pretending that you're flying through the air at a great speed and all that starts to build around us certain qualities that we eventually step into as a reality. Our imagination is not the reality, but it's kind of like the framework, of a future reality. Just like the outline of something, vague outline of something that we eventually become. The imagination engages with what does not yet exist, and that is a beautiful function that we have. And it's not exactly owned by us either. It's the imagination is a mixture between what actually is and what isn't yet. But it's not the actual thing. Okay, the actual thing comes through playing the game over and over and over again until we recognize the boundaries of the real game that we're in, and we now feel comfortable playing it. That's kind of how it works. And thank you for that question. That's important because people get confused. They think that visions and their imagination and everything is contact with the Creator, and it's not. These things are all kinds of awakenings and preparations. Either the awakening comes suddenly as some kind of a experience that we have, or it comes through us efforting in our imaginative process. But they're really both the same thing. They're kind of like help to guide us towards manifesting internally how you can actually live in a different state. And one last question, Mary?
Okay, you want to take one more, Tony? I see we're 8:32.
Yeah.
Okay, one more. Let's see. YouTube viewer, Hogos Relu Florentini. I have a question for the Kabbalist. Are there more versions of Kabbalah? Because I hear different ideas and different schools of Kabbalah. How can I know which one is the right one?
There are no versions of Kabbalah. There is the Kabbalistic tradition, the actual one, the lineage, and then there are all kinds of things that people made up without benefit of contact with the actual lineage. They're mixtures of things, they're people's imagination of things, they're working off of text without ever having received instruction, so that they seem to be formally related, but they're not really. There is a single strain of Kabbalah that have different sages, and those sages express it in different ways. But most of the books, 99.9% of the books, and those that call themselves Kabbalists are actually not. They're just people making mixtures of things. So what you need to work with Kabbalistic texts, real Kabbalistic texts, and you can find them at our bookstore. We only use authentic texts, and we'll post. Well, Mary has got some announcements that will give you, to talk about the access that you can get to these things. I say that B'nai Baruch and the books that we use and the people that we learn from and Rav Lightman and his teacher and the teacher of his teacher and the teacher of his teacher's teacher are all in this lineage. So you can get access to real Kabbalah through our materials, and we've got tons of materials, and you can study if you want. And I thank you very much for the wonderful questions. It was really very active Zoom meeting, and usually isn't that active, so it's beautiful, and the questions are great. And thank you to our viewers on Facebook and on YouTube, and thanks for your questions, and I hope you got something out of this. And Mary.
Okay, thank you, Tony. Just to reiterate what Tony said, thank you for all the advanced questions, beautiful questions today. There were so many more, Tony, that we didn't get to. So if you're in Kabbalah Revealed 1 and 2, you can take those questions to the forum. If not, definitely sign up for the course that's coming up, and I'll announce that shortly. And return for our next live Q&A, and maybe we'll extend it to 3 hours. Tony's looking at me. Okay, anyway, thank you all for your questions. Also, I wanted to add the other locations, and I apologize if I missed any of you out there. I have Lake Mary, Florida, New York, Brazil, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Wales, Mexico, Costa Rica, Morocco, Meridian, Connecticut, Portugal, Saskatoon, Canada, and California. Again, thank you for sharing all those locations. Okay, now for the announcements. If you're watching on YouTube and Facebook and you want to sign up for the course that starts November 29th, you can do that. Our tech team's dropping all of those links in the chats. We have a pay what you wish tuition if you want to participate in the course tuition or simply support the spreading of the wisdom of Kabbalah. You can do that on our pay what you wish page. That's also in the chat. And for Kabbalah Revealed 1 and 2, you can get your course book packages with a 20% discount. That's also in the chat, so check for those links. Again, great to see everyone. It was a beautiful, warm field of connection here today on account of you. So thank you so much. Great to be together.
It's up to us, you know. Up the ladder, left and right, we climb the middle line. The world of infinity appears to us one bit at a time. Every situation comes like this. First there's a flirt and then there comes a kiss. There's nothing bad about it, ascending on the ladder of degrees. The only thing we have to see is the giver is higher than the receiver. Nothing bad about it, ascending on the ladder of degrees. The only thing we have to see is the giver is higher than the receiver. Giver is higher than the receiver. We're all one body, we all have different roles. We unite and draw the light, it's up to us, you know. Up the ladder, left and right, we climb the middle line. The world of infinity appears to us one bit at a time. Every situation comes like